everyone, and welcome to another Scots Whay Hae podcast. And we are in the Dakota Hotel, just outside Glasgow, to talk to a Beerjacket himself, Peter Kelly. Oh, Peter.
How are you doing?
Well, we're here really to talk about Silver Chords, which is songs and stories, which is out now on Scottish Fiction. So you tell us in your own words a little bit about Silver Chords.
Well, this was a project that began from an inception about 3 years ago to this remarkable uphill struggle of actually putting the idea together and making it any more than just an idea. So the idea occurred to me that it might be a nice way of bringing into the physical world an album in this day and age, to write a book and to have the stories that came to me from the songs actually appear as stories rather than just as these sort of theoretical ideas in my head, which, if it was left to me, probably would have never really come to fruition. I had to have this affirmed for me that it was actually a good idea by people that had common sense about whether or not I was going to manage to do it. So I asked my best friend, asked my wife, and they both thought it was a good idea. So
we'll show you a picture of this when we come to post this up, but it's an absolutely beautiful book.
It is, and my hands were utterly shaken when I held it for the first time. And I mean, it's not often that I think my idea ever has really appeared in reality in the same sort of, to the same degree of exactitude. It really was what was in my head, and I couldn't quite believe that I was holding this thing that I dreamed of. And it really is a beautiful thing. So,
and there's also some illustrations in it. Are they your illustrations as
well?
They are.
Fantastic. That was Julia Duggan. Has to take a lot of the credit for that, even though it certainly didn't look like that when I gave it to her. I mean, it was basically badly taken photographs of my drawings stuffed into a Polly Pocket with all the kind of printed sheets. It did not look like that. I think it takes somebody with a lot of vision, and in Julia's case, it's not just her ability to see things. I mean, she's a graphic designer, so She was bringing these kind of proper skills. But she insisted that I drew all the pictures. She felt that would have created more intimacy than if she was to reproduce them, which is what I actually asked for in the first place, was that she would take these drawings that I had done and she would do them properly.
Right. Oh no, I think they're perfect the way they are. They really kind of add something to the book. And Julia, she's performed with you at times, isn't she?
Yeah. I mean, I think, even though I think our initial sort of relationship came from, just playing gigs together, and then she stood in at one point and sang with me and has stayed ever since, because we're really great friends for one thing, but I think there's just something really special about our voices together, and there aren't many people who I would have thought would be able to work with me, to be honest.
I have to say, I've heard you both together, and your voices do work well together. I think we'll talk a little bit about your music career later on, because I think I saw you first in the mid-noughties, would that be right?
Oh, it might well be, yeah.
So
it's
you've
been going for a while.
Going for a wee while. And when I was telling a few people that we were going to be doing this today, they were like, "Oh yeah, I remember seeing him doing that. He's still going." And he certainly is, and he's got new material out.
I think especially because I disappeared for a few years. Because I was working on this. I mean, I was more or less kind of holed away creating this thing, because it takes a long time to put any one of these things together, and putting them all together took 3 years.
Well, I know how long it takes to write a book, and you'll know how long it takes to put a CD together, so to cram these things together and do it right as you've done. Yeah, I can imagine it did take a long time.
I think people did either they had forgotten about it altogether, or else they'd thought that it was probably more enigmatic than it was. I wasn't trying. I wasn't trying to be, puzzling or mysterious. I was genuinely busy. I was away working,
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. Real life gets in the way as well. You have to work and you have to do all these things. Absolutely. So I think, if it's okay with you, I'm going to get you to read the foreword, because it gives people an idea of the themes behind the book and the CD.
Sure. This is really, really new. I've been saying that. I mean, this is a new part of my
out your comfort
experience. Zone. It is, absolutely. Maybe we're living in the last days of physical things. Maybe we are the last of those physical things. Everything now seems to exist in some vague realm that we pin down weakly with language that is itself constantly evolving and morphing. We don't really possess anything anymore, we only access and share things. We're all just floating in space. Of course, we always were just floating in space, but now, without any objects to weigh us down, it feels like we could just spin off into orbit and lose the illusion of being anywhere. When I was growing up, I cared more about records and books than pretty much anything else. For that very reason, I owned barely any records or books because these things had value, and with value there was always a cost. Now we struggle to convince people that things have a value at all, and no one wants to pay for anything. Maybe as well as living in the last days of physical things, we're living in the days of the last songs. People who care for songs beyond their 3 minutes are a dying breed. The first time you heard a song used to be carved into your memory, entwined with other firsts and vital seconds. A song was like the DeLorean from Back to the Future. Hearing a song could transport your atoms immediately to a different time and place, like you'd stepped through a portal, a magical mirror. These days, the only things people will readily pay for are those which offer convenience or which have some sort of practical usefulness. Well, art isn't convenient at all, and it's fiercely impractical, but there can be no doubt of its deep and essential value. Without art, we couldn't hope to express the world of dreams, and instead we would be stuck with the cold and monochromatic routine of the everyday. In dreams and in art, you can be anywhere, do anything, be anyone. Dreams are the chords sewn throughout our realities. If yours are as vivid as mine, they might be more tangible than many real things anyway. How many times have you woken up to find yourself facing a new morning and wondered, what on earth is going on? For however many hours you manage a night, you're repeatedly immersed in what you're sure is real only to find that it was not. That state of disorientation is one in which most of us secretly live our lives, pretending all the while that we know exactly what we're doing and understand fully what the world expects of us. The truth is that everyone is guessing, but some of us happen to be gifted actors or just liars. And those are the very people whose apparent lack of fear places so much pressure on the rest of us to be sure of our direction. So, in this time of floating impermanence, the act of buying a book or a record really feels like a grand gesture, like picking a side, the side that says that art matters, the one that says no to practical things in favour of the practice of things. It's a team to which anyone can belong because there is a book, a record, a photograph or a painting that will seem to speak louder to you than anyone else in the universe. Even better is the realisation that there may be millions of others who feel the same way about that same work of art as you do. For each of those people, it is a mirror of something true to them as individuals, and simultaneously it connects them to all of those other individuals. No one is alone, and no one is completely unique. Imagine if we all stopped and looked up to see ourselves in each other and just listened together. We would still be floating in space without a clue what we're doing, but how much better would it be to join hands and float together? Now imagine we had real physical things again. Imagine the weight that would give us. Those things that we used to love and be defined by. Imagine that we tied ourselves to those mirrors again, the ones that allow us to see ourselves, to be ourselves, and to be with others.
Fantastic. I think that's really poignant because of what a beautiful thing this is. But it also makes me think of when I first started, particularly buying records. And that was the thing, you would save the money that you had, and you would go down to usually Woolworths or some place that you could get cheaper records or whatever than the stuff that was coming out. And then somewhere along the line, that just sort of got lost. And I mean, even with myself, when I started to earn a little bit of money working, and then I would still be spending loads of money on music. But I was less discerning, didn't mean as much, earlier today when I was talking about Blue Nile and the early Blue Nile records,
I can't believe you're talking about the Blue Nile. I'm obsessed with the Blue Nile right now.
And this is the other thing we find, that they've become one of these bands that they're like the worst kept secret ever, because everyone you talk to, I love them, but nobody ever really talks about them.
Have you heard the classic story about somebody recommending the Blue Nile to Paul Buchanan? I mean, that's exactly what it's all about.
I can imagine he'd probably be quite polite and go, well, thank you very much, let's check them out. So I remember getting a walk across the rooftops. I still have that original vinyl record. It's pristine, and I haven't even played it that much in terms of, because it means so much to me.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You think, oh, am I going to play that this time? It's going to mean less to me than it has before. But there was, I can remember just playing records to death. Talking Heads, Stop Making Sense being another one. One, because that's all you could afford for some time, and secondly, because you just wanted to spend time with that record and find out all the little things about it. And it's the way I feel about my favourite books as well.
Yeah.
You know,
you miss characters when the book ends, and I've genuinely got a desire to live inside Kate Bush's Hounds of Love. I would like to live in that album.
That's a great idea. And when we were talking at the best Scottish books of this year, my favourite one is a collection of poetry by Jenny Fagan called There's a Witch in the Word Machine.
Right.
And they're spell poems, they're really fantastic. But it kind of, a bit like carrying an album around or something, it was in my bag all the time. And when I had a spare 5 minutes, I would go and pick it up and read it again, because you find new things each time, but you also are enjoying that familiarity with them as well, as you would with the records. I mean, I can, you know the words to songs from decades ago, and you think, how do I still retain that song? But it's because you spent so much time with it, I think. I
think it ends up kind of almost changing. It changes you as a person. So, you know, when you look at a record or a book that means something to you, and I can remember carrying things about with me, like I can remember having a tape of Nirvana's Nevermind in my blazer pocket when I was at school for no reason, you know, just almost like I wanted to always remind myself that, you know, that was a part of me, that was, you know. So I think that's the thing, when you know, you've got these things that you've encountered in your life that have in some way changed you. They're bookmarks to, you know, all those different points in your life. And
absolutely.
So when you look at, I think sometimes there is a pleasure in almost just looking at a thing without necessarily listening to it or even reading it, just knowing it's there. And as I was saying in that little foreword, I think it does weigh you down, like in a positive way. It gives you some sort of grounding, you know, that you really do exist. That, you know, that this is you've been alive at this time when this thing appeared in your life, and that's part of the reason. You would like to think maybe part of the reason why you were born then was to encounter that thing at that time.
I think the idea of having an object that is beautiful, that is now almost coming round again. You've seen the recent revival of vinyl, and I think there's a problem there, because now that's becoming so expensive, it's almost going the way of the CD, you know. That happened at the end. But when that started, it was often smaller independent companies that said, we're going to put this out on vinyl, see if anybody wants it. It wasn't the big companies, they were still putting stuff out on DVD. And they were things of beauty. And even when I first started doing this site and I was getting music sent to me, they would still be in CDs, but they would be so lovingly packaged, or people would be doing maybe a little bit of embroidery to go along with it, or they would be doing badges, or they would be, I mean, really, you know,
embroidery, that's really committed. That's great.
I was at a gig just the other night, and it was Elizabeth Russo, who was doing a night of her. She's originally from Romania, stroke Moldova, and she did a whole night of traditional songs. It was an amazing night.
Right.
She said, I've got CDs to sell at the back, but I've also got, I can't remember what it was, but it was basically something she had crafted herself, you know. And she said, they're great presents for Christmas, stuff like that, but it kind of all fits in. It's creating a beautiful thing.
I get it, I completely get it, because I think, I mean, I've been asked a few times recently about sort of this kind of token question about how things have changed, and is it more difficult to release music now and things. And to an extent it maybe is, but only in that it's forcing people with less imagination to try a bit harder. You know what I mean? Because you should be putting some sort of you know, creative, desirable thing together. Otherwise, why should somebody pay for it?
If you don't care about it.
Nobody needs a record. Nobody, you know, will starve without you making music. So you've got to make that in some way have an importance in their life. And, you know, maybe in the past it would have been easier to impact with, you know, there being less distraction and less, you know, of the technology and all the rest of it. But that doesn't mean that those records that meant something to you when there was less distraction don't have more significance. It just means that now, with there being so much noise, what you're saying has to have some sort of meaning.
Yeah, has to stand out, has to stand aside. I think it's really interesting. This is on Scottish Fiction, which is a smallish indie label, and there is quite a lot of small indie labels about just now, I think driven by people who are incredibly passionate about what they do.
Oh, completely.
And these are the people that are creating the objects and the moments and allowing people like yourself to kind of do the vision, and it's small collaboration, whereas the problem with big business music industry is it's far too big. So the chances are that the musician certainly used to be like this, whether it still is like this, they wouldn't dress themselves, they wouldn't have any say in how it looked, they wouldn't have any say in how it sounded often, they certainly wouldn't have any way in how it was marketed. But with your relationship with Neil at Scottish Fiction, you're both working together and doing the same thing.
I've been saying this to people. I mean, I thought that it would completely break down the moment I said what I actually wanted to do. He said that he wanted to put out something for me, something special. Wanted to do something special, and what he really meant was vinyl. He wanted to do a vinyl release, but I thought if I don't share what I actually want to do, then you'll never know. So when I said no, I would like to release this as a book and every song's got a story, I thought he would just say no. I thought that would be the end of the road, totally. But I mean, I think you're right. I think that the sort of smaller independents, they are driven by something different, and the kind of big companies are always about a fast return. Now, I'm, for a start, too slow a worker to get a fast return, because I don't believe in working quickly. I believe in working committedly towards something that matters, So the kind of the fast return would never have been a thing for me. So you really want to work with people that want some sort of other reward. And for Neil, the reward, I think, was that rather than me suggesting this idea and it just being immediately, jettisoned into the ether as just a good idea or an interesting idea, but let's do a vinyl release, he went with it. And I think it's a sign that, not only are people that are passionate about releasing independently more likely to invest in an idea, they're also investing their own risk in it, their own, we've both stepped out of our comfort zone. Neil's never released a book before, and he's learned everything from scratch in terms of, there was a big laugh when he talked about this at a bookshop recently, about how he didn't even realise you needed an ISBN number. I mean, there's just, the process of learning about all of this has been just massive for both of us, and as we've got more and more people involved in making it happen, it's become a real sort of warm, kind of communal project, where otherwise it could have felt to me like a real self-indulgence that I'm getting to do everything that I want to do. I'm so far from that, and I would be mortified at the idea that this looks like anything other than, I had this idea and I've been supported by other people. That is 100% the truth. Wouldn't have happened without Julia, wouldn't have happened without Neil, actually wouldn't have happened even as a record without Stuart MacLeod that recorded it. He's recorded the past 3 records, including this one with me, and I think I would have killed that record. I would have killed the past 2 as well, through overwork, through trying to hide things. He's very good at basically scything through all of my insecurity, right, and just going, no, that's the way that we should leave it. Don't hide it. Don't cover anything up. So it sounds ridiculous to say, because I know I've obviously done a lot here and a lot of work, but this is a communal project. My name doesn't appear on it, and that's something that only fairly grudgingly that I put my name on anything, because. It just feels like as soon as you put your name on something, I don't know if this is Scottish cringe material, right, but as soon as you put your name on something, there's almost a kind of there's a risk that you might be too defensive about it, and then you might damage it, because you should just
understand.
Yeah, you should just be putting something out as honestly as possible. So in a way, the only way to do that really is to do it in disguise. Nobody can really be completely honest if they've got their name on something.
But these things are always collaborations, whether your name's on it or not. I mean, I know, having worked with books, that the relationship between the writer and the editor is an absolutely crucial one. Did you have an editor in this as well?
I did. I worked with Charles McGarry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, who I think
of the Leo Moran mysteries.
Yeah. I'm on to the second one now. I've just started it actually. I've got too many books piled up, and in fact, just as a sort of side note, one of the things that I've discovered that's really different is that you get much slower feedback on a book than you get on a record. Because of the sort of instant nature of how people listen to and process music these days, you get a very quick kind of response from people. You can
listen to a CD in the afternoon, but you've really got, I have anyway, to sit down and take your time with a book to really get into it, yeah.
And I think that's been terrifying actually. I mean, putting something out which is of that slower nature, the return is so much slower as well, and you kind of do feel like you need a wee bit of reassurance. Is this good? And I mean, you don't want to ask either, so it's a real catch-22, to use another book. But so Charles, at a kind of earlier stage in it, I sent him over. He read stuff before anybody else, and I can't remember exactly the wording, did I? I might even have said, is this good? It was probably a wee bit of a less certain email than I might have wanted to send out, but I was really kind of trusting him to give me his honest reaction. And not only did he give me that, he gave me so much support in terms of telling me where something maybe needed to change a wee bit or whatever. And, obviously he's coming from a reader's perspective, but he's also a writer, so
I think that's a really important point, and it's a good thing, I think, in these situations, to get a writer to look at your stuff, because they understand how honest they've got to be for it to work. They can't just say, it's perfect as it is. No. Because nobody's stuff's like that. No,
and even after I fixed things, I mean, I knew it wasn't perfect, and I think there were probably about 50 drafts or something by then. And the thing is, the book part of it was purposely supposed to be short. I wanted the stories ideally to be about the length of a song. I don't think that's quite exact, but it's not a million miles off, and they're sort of like longer kind of flash fiction sort of style short stories. So, I mean, even just that, in terms of like kind of editing down an idea, basically like 3 bullet points. That was my kind of planning strategy. Was I need to know, what am I thrusting the reader into at the beginning, what's going to happen next, how's this going to end. And I mean, it was just kind of had to be as simplistic as that in terms of just organising the fact that these, I'm not exaggerating, I had, these stories were just appearing, coinciding with the songs, and so I'm dealing with 2 different things that are floating into my head at one time, and especially knowing that I was recording an album that had these stories, but that nobody at the point when I was recording them was actually going to be putting it out. The record was actually finished, I think, before Neil said that he would do something, and so these stories, they were almost like kind of niggling at me and eating in the back of my head for all of the songs, and they didn't have a home. There was a book format, but I didn't have anybody that was actually going to put it out. Nobody knew that I was even doing it. It felt like a kind of mad pursuit. What exactly is this other thing that's going on? And especially, I mean, you'll know yourself, when you've been writing something and you've got, we've always got these disclaimers at the front that say that, it's entirely coincidental, etc. But there were settings where I was maybe driving past or walking past, and I was aware of what was going on in those rooms, and they weren't. It was just stories in my head. These incidents weren't happening. These characters weren't real. So without a home for any of these things or these people, it's a strange. You're leaving these things in a strange limbo, and so I was well aware that when I was putting this together, I was occupying so many different parts of my brain. I had these pictures in my head as well, and and I knew that I wanted to put them into illustrations and things, but at the same time I thought, well, I'm not a writer and I'm not an artist. I barely even feel like a songwriter most of the time. It just feels like a surreal dream now to be sitting with the thing finished.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So talk a little bit about the relationships between the songs and the stories, because the way they're set out on the back, you've got the
equal billing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to check it's the songs first and then the stories after. So to talk a little bit about the way that they work together.
Well, I mean, first of all, Neil asked me at a bookshop thing that we were doing recently, did you ever have any stories go along with songs before? And I didn't, and I'd not even really thought about this, but the stories kind of floated into my head at the same time as the songs. Did they necessarily connect always exactly? No, definitely not. I mean, some of the time they're based entirely on dreams that I've had,
right.
So they were basically, I suppose, in the same way that, this probably sounds like a lie, but I'll wake up sometimes with a song, and I was waking up with these stories that were sort of fitting alongside, and I could see the relation, and there were words maybe that were similar, were chiming between the songs and the stories, but they were two separate things.
So I was interested, how did you know they were two separate things?
I don't know if you ever really know that things are separate. I mean, I'm discovering connections between things that I know, I know were there before I wrote anything down.
But you would wake up and go, right, that's a story. That's not a song lyric, it's a story.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there were sort of scraps of it that I was writing that were almost more like non-fiction, that, were just almost kind of diary style, kind of just realisations or feelings that I had, that I would be writing things down, and then these would turn up in the narrative of the characters. But then, to sort of dispel this, the stories aren't about me, but the songs, I couldn't deny, are.
Yeah.
I mean, the characters in the stories are not. They're not like me even when they are, because these are dissatisfied people, and I feel that maybe if there's any connection between characters that I've got, for example, there's a character I'm thinking of in particular with a family that has exactly the same formation as mine. He's got a son and a daughter, and he's a wife, but that's hardly a very close approximation of anybody. It's completely generic.
I think we were talking before we started about, I've done quite a few podcasts with musicians, and I've certainly done a lot with writers, and that the musicians are often, not always, but they're kind of hesitant to talk about the songs, whereas the writers are quite happy to talk about the books.
Right.
That's generalising hugely, but I wonder if it is because people's songs tend to be personal.
But I mean, these ones are definitely.
Maybe want to talk about that because they've done it in the song already. So listen to the song. I've had people say that to me. You don't understand it. Listen to the song.
I know, but I think that is quite evasive as well, because I mean, whilst I would say definitely these songs are personal, more personal than I've written in the past probably, but the way that I talk sometimes is so oblique, and when I write things down it's even more so, that even if I'm writing something that I think seems clear as day, I'm writing it heaped in metaphor. I mean, it's the classic act of the sort of singer-songwriter, that they write a really personal song but they completely hide everything they're writing about. I mean, so
I wonder if the stories are also personal but just better hidden. You see,
I don't know about that.
Especially when they're coming from dreams.
I don't know how well they probably are hidden, if that's the case. I mean, the best pal that asked if it was a good idea, he doesn't remember ever having said that it was a good idea, but he did. He sent me a message after reading one of the stories, Shoots of Life, and he said that I really liked your story, by the way. I was like, oh, good, thank you. He said, I thought it was autobiographical until you got to the name. And I was like, just because it's first person, it doesn't mean it's autobiographical. And he went, sounds like you. And I said, right, well, I'm a woman in some of the stories. And he went, sounds like you. And then he said, and I said that one of the women's got a really horrible friend. And at that point, he didn't say sounds like you. He said, is it about me? So, I think when you write, this is something new to me as well, when you write something that is not in a song format, where it is potentially more like, it could be thematic and it could fit with, anybody's experience, and maybe that's partly what a songwriter's going for as well, is to try and fit a more kind of general response. Maybe we're all going for people connecting, and but with a story, I think people are always looking for themselves and what the person who is in some way related to them has written.
I think especially when it's people who know you. And when you write, when anyone I've spoken to other people, just when they write, they're like that. Is that based on me? Or is that based on such and such?
There definitely are. There are some similarities. You can't escape from that. No. But I mean, I don't think there was anything as anything as calculated as that. I mean, I think I'm a secretary. I'm just listening to the ideas that are coming to me, and maybe somebody else has got a better position and they've got more right to say, I think that this is actually about, blah blah blah, in the same way that people can interpret your dreams,
I think it's also really interesting because I'm going to guess that this wasn't calculated either, but the ideas of writing about dreams and also flash fiction, short fiction at the moment is really quite, it's having a moment. There's a lot of great short story writers and flash fiction writers who've had stuff out in the last year, and this, I mean, even go back to Jenny Fagan's spell poems, this idea that we're getting information which is not conscious, it's a kind of semi-conscious, or it's coming from somewhere else, and as you say, you're a secretary or an interpreter, or you're kind of putting this stuff out there, you're not entirely sure where it's coming from. I think that's really interesting. I feel
a bit like a bus driver almost, because you kind of you just inspect what is it that this thing wants to do, where does it want to go, and you just take it there and you let it go. And that's one of the things that I think was quite difficult to do with the book. I was getting a really bad rep with Neil and with Julia, because Julia was doing all the typesetting and everything, and obviously Neil was just wanting to make sure that this thing was going to come out on time, because he put so much work into all the stuff before, and so I think I was starting to get annoying now, because I didn't want to let it go. But that's 3 years worth of work. Of course you don't want to let it go. And it'll never really be finished.
Yeah, well, I mean, most writers will tell you that you just have to let it go at some point, or you would just, you'd be writing the continuous.
Yeah.
There was a Glasgow writer called Jeff Torrington, who was a contemporary of Alistair Gray and James Kelman and Tom Leonard, and he was in that Hobsbawm group. And he would come to the group for a bit, and then he wouldn't be seen for a while, and he would come back and he wouldn't be seen for a while, and then I'm still writing my book, meanwhile they're putting stuff out and and getting great reputations. And Jeff eventually put Swing Hammer Swing out, which won the Whitbread Prize in the early 90s, but he'd been working on it for ages, and that was his thing. He says, I just can't let this go.
I mean, I think
publishers usually say to you, you've got to let it go because there's a deadline on getting the thing published. That's usually what happens in the maybe because it was the only book Neil was doing, he was not too
maybe once all the other acts on his label want to put out a book, he'll not be so forgiving. But I think it's a wee bit of a selfishness. You want to stay with the characters, and you want to stay with this whole sort of this whole world. And I'll be honest, I think especially given that I haven't been honest, and that some of the settings definitely are places that are nearby where I live, and places that I'm a lot, I'm a wee bit reluctant to allow the door to shut on all of those places that I've been occupying in my head. And I do get a weird sort of feeling as I go past places. As I say, I do feel like I know what's happening in there, one of the things that I really wanted to do as well was leave the characters quite kind of vague, and not fill in too many details, because it would be presumptuous to assume that I know everything about them anyway. They're just characters that floated into my head and stories that floated into my head, and I didn't want to get any more involved with their details than I do with the songs.
Which makes me want to ask the question, would you write more? Are you going to write more? Is this the first book, first collection?
I've got loads and loads of ideas. The only thing is I don't want to do the same thing that I've done this time. Yeah. So inevitably, see, when you've done something that's quite ambitious and it's outside of your comfort zone, you can't occupy that zone again. You can't say that you're still going out of your comfort zone and you do exactly the same thing. So, I mean, inevitably now, because I've I've created this relationship or these relationships with people that have indulged my over-ambitious idea. These are some of the same people that I would be asking again, you know, what do you think about this idea, you know? I mean, some of the suggestions, fueled by too much coffee a lot of the time, that I've made have just been, the suggestions have been completely over the top, and yet so far the response, similar to how this one went down, has been, we'll try that, and we'll contact this person, we'll do this. I like making things, and it's,
so what kind of things are you talking
about?
You don't have to tell us in detail, you want to keep them secret.
Well, I mean, I didn't tell anybody about this, for example, until it was announced. So by that point it was already happening, you know. I mean, I'm a wee bit cagey, to be honest with you, talking about ideas, because when my worst nightmare was that somebody was going to find out that we were doing this, and they were going to just do a hack job of it quickly and, you know, throw out the idea. Because for me it wasn't about the novelty of the idea. I really had to make this thing, I had to make it good, and I had to make it happen, you know. And I mean, I'm not so, if I was precious about my ideas, I would put my name on it, you know. But I'm precious only about the quality of whatever the thing is. I don't care about myself, to be honest with you, as being a component in this. And ideally, you know, the truth would be that I would kind of not be, I wouldn't be involved, I would just get to enjoy it. I mean, it sounds like I don't know if it sounds like it maybe sounds like I'm not being genuine, and I really hope it doesn't sound like I'm not being genuine, but I like this thing so much that I wish I could just enjoy it. I wish I could just be an impartial observer, an audience member, participating just in
I totally
responding
believe
to
that,
it.
Because I know, I mean, a lot of people spoken to or just spoke to anyway who are involved in music in particular, also in other areas of the arts, they find it quite a painful thing to do. You know, and you think, well, why put yourself through it? Because I love what comes out the other side of it. And they don't think you say it's not about having the name up in lights or anything. It's about saying, well, look what's come out. You know, people who are almost physically sick before they go on stage, but they love playing their instrument, and they love to hear other people play their instruments and even just collaborate. I know people that would be happy playing to an empty hall. It's the playing together. That's the thing. In fact, they might be happier playing to an, you know, they would say. But so I completely believe that, you know, and it's the same with some painters I know that go through, you know, really, oh, is this right? And then start again, and you think, well, why put yourself through that? Because it's not that they want to sell what comes out at the end for millions. It's because that it's the thing at the end that's important. That's important. It's not the people involved, really. Although, as you say, collaboration is a really important thing. But it's the quality of the thing that comes out at the end. I
just feel that being in whatever way creative is really generous, and you know, I just think there's a virtue to just making a thing and not wanting something back. And so I like making things because I think that people respond to that, and they enjoy that there are creative things in the world, you know.
Absolutely.
And I've only really over the past wee while started to fall in love with being creative again, you know. And I mean, I say only recently I realised for 3 years I've been creating a thing, but I think that when, you know, there have been times in the past when I've just not realised that that's a fortunate thing to be able to do, and that you should be grateful of that and do it because you can, and to make something for other people.
So did you said earlier that you kind of took a break, or you weren't kind of around music in terms of out playing gigs and stuff. Was that a deliberate choice?
I didn't want to just keep doing things without there being, how do I put it, I think just playing music and not having something new that I could give people was maybe, that would be a wee bit too much of a self-satisfied thing to do, where you just want applause. You know, you've got to give people something, you've got to make something in order to deserve any sort of thanks, you know. So going and playing, I could have played constantly for years. What would be the point? You know, I mean, look at, we were talking about the Blue Nile earlier, who I'm completely obsessed with, and I think, you know, the whole kind of, it's not an aesthetic. What is it? Philosophy, I suppose, that he has. Well, you know,
they were. I mean, I had to know because I was talking about them earlier today. But between the first and second album, 5 years. Second and third album, 7 years. Third and fourth album, 8 years. Because they wanted it to be this as close to perfection as they could get it. They wanted to work it. I mean, it wasn't just that they were, you know, they did other things in those times, but, you know, to be away for that long and then to come back with something that was at least as great as what went before is an incredible thing to do, I think.
I think that second record is, it's just perfect. Yeah. I mean, every single time I listen to it, it feels like it's informing more of what I think being creative is all about. Yeah. Every time I listen to it, I start to realise more why you make something, and I listen to it every day. Yeah. So is it any wonder I'm getting more excited about being creative? But, do you know, I think something about his whole, I mean, I'm giving it all down to him. I mean, it is, I think, a large part of his voice, Paul Buchanan's voice, and the way that he sings, not just the way that it sounds, but the way that he sings, it so closely mirrors the honesty of the way that he speaks in interviews, and the fact that he very seldom speaks in interviews. Yep. It's not about the amount that he creates, it's the amount of value in what he creates.
I think that's really interesting, because I think it signals to you about, it's not the amount of things that you say, or it's not the amount of things that you put out, it's what you do or what you say when you do say something, or when you do put something out. You know, that's got to have value, and it only has value if there's something rare about it as well. I think you're right. I think it's very interesting to hear you say, I could have gone on playing every weekend, different people, and I would have got applause, and I've got people that like my songs and all of that stuff.
That's not enough,
got to be
though,
more. It's not. It kind of goes away from the creative thing. And I know musicians and writers who, some of them have chucked it, but because actually the process of going out and selling the book or selling the record or all that stuff has kind of just turned them off the whole thing. What they really want to do is making the next one, or writing the next one, or doing that kind of thing. That's the important process.
I've purposely ignored the album that I wrote accidentally at the end of all of this, so that I didn't get too interested in what's next, because that's completely at odds. It's at odds with what I think this has all been about. It's making a thing that's going to have some sort of permanence to it. I don't like the idea that I'd be thinking about the next thing, so I've basically switched off from the future so that I can just be in the moment.
Could I get you to read the afterword then as well? I think that would be good, because we talked about how the book began, so here we're going to have a look at how it ends. It's not a spoiler thing, so don't worry, people.
Maybe a funny thing to ask at the end of a book, but why bother writing anything? It seems that more people write than read now, so who is there to write for? It always was a selfish conceit. I have a vivid childhood memory of trying to walk through a wall. As a child, you believe that anything is possible. As you get older, you might get wiser, but becoming more committed to an idea doesn't necessarily mean being more certain that you're right. Pictorially, a human life might be best illustrated in a comic strip. In the first square, the child is walking through a wall. In the second, the adult is telling the child it can't be done. In the third, the wall collapses on them both. Adults don't have it all sewn up, but they're sewn into the clothes that help them remember who they are, who they must be, who they've agreed to be. As a child, you believe that adults have some sort of power, and then you get there and discover that the infinitesimal autonomy you enjoy could fit inside a thimble. Look at your life and all the time you occupy looking forward. It's like you're a ghost of the future haunting your present. Responsibilities are hungry and will eat you alive. Your minutes are planned more than they're lived, and you exist in a state of eternal frustration, not at having failed to shake yourself free, but at having chosen to remain a prisoner. You're more a boss of your body than a person sometimes. The more you embrace the adult world, the more you come to resemble other adults. We abandon creativity for necessity, and in doing so we abandon ourselves. We perform for others so much of the time that we might even forget that it's a performance, and so we continue to act, even alone, until we become almost unrecognisable to ourselves. Maybe you know the midnight terror that sets in when you meet a stranger in your home, in your own skin. So that's it there. That's the reason to write. Write because it's your heart. Giving your heart to the world is giving it life, and let them break it. Once you've given it away, it's not yours to protect or preserve. Destruction is creation, or so says Picasso, and well, he's Picasso. So let it happen. Just throw it out to the dogs and let them do what they will. I'm arguing with myself now to let it go. Eventually there will be the last songs, but songs last. Not just the loved ones, but the ones nobody likes, the lonely ones, the ugly ones, and even the forgotten ones. They're all out there for good, floating around in the air like lost balloons, their breaths kissed into life. Songs are dreams that escaped. I think that when you dream, you're peeking behind the scenes at the real nature beyond nature. A dream shows you the truth in the way a boom mic does when it floats into the camera shot. There are cracks all over. This egg is hatching soon. Maybe when you sleep, you don't sleep at all. Maybe the reason your dreams are so real is that you're really always awake. Maybe the line between your imagined world and the world you imagine in is an eyelid barely open, barely closed.
It's great finish to the book, and it's I love that idea that the songs last. The songs will always be out there, even the ones which aren't the favourite songs. I'm talking about how much the Blue Nile songs does, but I always think there's probably somewhere somebody, every song that'll go, that's my favourite song.
I know, it's
amazing. You might even admit it, but there's songs for everyone. Having created this book and CD, how do you envisage how songs will be the future? Because songs will always be written, they always have been, and they always will be. And it really just is in the ways that we are going to engage with them. And I think there was a worry, maybe in the mid-noughties, certainly kind of roughly when I started the website, that, as you say, if something doesn't have any value, then you don't put value into it, you don't look at it with value, and it doesn't in turn affect you in the same way. But actually there will always be songs and books and films that even if someone's picked it up on Spotify and heard it, they'll go back to it and they'll go back to it, and it will continue to mean something. So it's really just how, and it's a horrible thing, but it's almost the way that business wants to monetize it, whereas actually we just want to hear the songs, we just want to read the books, and we just want to talk to each other about them and all of those kind of things.
I don't think they'll ever lose that power. I think that, even you could listen to 1,000 songs on Spotify, you hear that one song that speaks to you, is going to have the same impact as if it was back in the days when you would have a very finite number of songs that you could listen to. You hear a song differently that's got that kind of power.
Well, exactly, because back in the days when I would listen to the radio all the time when I was 11, 12, whatever, 13, and that's all I would kind of listen to, apart from if I was able to get the 7-inch single or something. That was kind of the Spotify because you didn't know what was coming up next.
Yep.
But you were sitting listening to it anyway, and then you would hear, whatever the song was, you would hear Bob Dylan for the first time, and you would hear something like that, and you'd go, oh my God, what's this? And you would still want to go and find out more and find out the rest of the stuff. So I think you're right. I think, whether it's packaging in vinyl, or whether it's on cassette, or wherever it gets there, and I think that can help if you create beautiful things. They help things of beauty to kind of be presented, but there will always be something just in that simple song, or that line of poetry, or the chapter in a book that you just go back to time and time again, and as you said, I think right at the beginning, that will change your life and take with you.
I don't think there's any exaggeration there either. Like, you really do. I think they carry the essence of what life's all about. These sort of things that you hear for the first time that really switch something on, or if you read something that doesn't read like other books that you've read, or whatever. I don't know. I mean, people will make probably make critical remarks about my favourite book. My favourite book's The Catcher in the Rye. But if you're 15 years old and you meet Holden Caulfield, that could be transformative.
That's absolutely right, and a lot of it, like a lot of relationships, is all about timing.
Completely.
When you read it, read something for the first time, that and that can happen as late in life as it is in your younger years, but I think in your younger years you're almost more open to it, because you don't have the background and maybe sometimes the baggage.
Yeah.
If you read something that just kind of blows your mind like that, or you listen to a record like the Blue Nile record and you go, oh, you know, I am now not the same person as when I started listening to this.
Yeah, and I believe that will always happen. Yeah. I think it's people that are less influenced by time that are more likely to create those sorts of timeless things. Yeah. You know, if you're too aware of the time, or too aware of time at all, where you're either, you know, looking at what else surrounds you, or else you're thinking about maybe moving on to the next thing, then you're going to miss so much. And that's the case for somebody who's creating something, and it's the case for somebody who is just receptive to something. If you're not listening as a creator or as somebody who is just in the world, then you're going to miss so much. And I just feel like that's the key to being creative, is just pausing, just taking a moment and discovering what's in it. And you know, the thing that makes, I think the thing that makes a record timeless is when you almost, it could have come out today, it could have come out 20 years ago, or it could be 20 years in the future. And I think the music industry has been maybe foolish in thinking too much of what populist concerns are at any one time, when, you know, you look at other artistic disciplines are not about time, they're not about people's age, they're not about what's fashionable, they're not about anything other than creating something that's going to stand the test of time. And, you know, it's just really, really short-sighted to not see music as having that same value.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's because of the way that it went in terms of a teenage audience. That was the thing. And I think that's kind of almost I think what's really interesting is the generation maybe that are used to getting things for nothing. The marketing folk have then had to look at the older generation, because you see, like, if you go into FOP or any bigger record store, the vinyl that they've got costing about 40 quid a pop. It's like the reissues of the Beatles and reissues of Bowie and reissues of...
But then younger people now that are accessing, as you say, like everything, they've got access to everything for free, right? Yeah. They're actually developing better tastes because they don't have these prejudices. They're not being guided so much by marketing, because marketing can't reach them.
No, it's an incredibly freeing thing, actually, you know, to have that if it's used properly. And I think, you know, there's been a lot of doom and gloom about what that'll do, but actually what it'll do is people will find the things that they love and go and fall in love with them and investigate it more and have, you know.
I think it's almost like old style kind of folk tradition, the way that people would have songs sort of passed on in bothies and stuff like that, you know. Now it's just that the bothies are like Apple Music or Spotify or whatever, you know. They're discovering things that are well out with the you know, what they would have been exposed to otherwise. If it was, I mean, poor old me when I had like 10 cassettes, you know, and that was absolutely my education, that was my musical education. I wonder what would have happened if I had the exposure that kids have got now.
I know, exactly. I think that's the perfect place to leave it. So Peter, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be back soon with someone completely different. Cheers.